We are on Zoom and we are live. The internet can see us. How are you, sir?
Okay, good. Hanging in there.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, well, let me sort of restart the show for everybody that tuned in to see Walter Block. We were just talking about some viewer comments while we got started here. So I am excited to have you on. For those that don't know, I can't imagine that you watch this channel and not know Walter Block. As he always says, if it moves, privatize it. If it doesn't move, privatize it. And since everything either moves or doesn't move, privatize everything. Walter Block is a professor of economics at Loyola University, senior fellow at the Mises Institute, author of 500 articles, thousands of op-eds. I almost have his intro memorized at this point because I've said this spiel so many times. 24 books, an international leader in the freedom movement. And as someone on Twitter told me recently, which I think he might actually disagree with, a national treasure. Welcome to the show, Walter Block. Good to see you.
Oh, you're very kind. Thanks for having me, Patrick.
Very cool. Okay, so there's been sort of I don't know if you engage on the Twitter. I kind of hope you don't. To be honest, but there's been sort of a bifurcation in a lot of the libertarian communication channels around a protest that happened in Austin, Texas recently, where a bunch of protesters were marching filling the street. I don't even think they were on the sidewalks. They were just filling both lanes of both directions of the street. A car came, turned right, stopped, and the crowd surrounded him, started pounding on his car. Guy walked up to his window. I don't know if you've heard this story. Guy walked up to his window and the driver shot the guy and killed him. And then, of course, the crowd scattered and he drove away. And so the ethics of the situation has been hotly debated. I'm pretty sure the minority position is that the driver was not justified. I don't think many people have taken that position. But, you know, who cares how many people believe one thing or another? And also, for the purposes of our discussion, you know, I would be happy to sort of try it out both ways and talk about what variables in the situation, if we change them, how do the libertarian judgment of the situation change? So I'm fine with making a bunch of if statements. I just wanted to have the conversation with you because you've literally written a book on the subject. So do you want to tell us about your book first and then we can get into it?
Okay, I have written a book. I have a three-part series on privatization. The first one was on privatization of roads. The second one was on privatization of oceans, rivers, and lakes. And the third one was on privatization of the space exploration and Mars and Moon when we get there. But the most relevant one is the first one in this series, why should we privatize roads? Well, there are two reasons to privatize roads. One is deontological, and the other is empirical or utilitarian or pragmatic. The deontological is, private enterprise is compatible with human freedom. And anything that's not privatized is either unowned, which is okay if nobody wants it, but if the government prohibits you from owning it, well, they say nature abhors a vacuum. Well, the free enterprise system abhors unowned property, and anyone should be able to homestead unowned property. The ideal is that every square inch of the planet, including the oceans, should be under someone's private control. And the alternative is government owns it. If private people don't own it and it's not unowned, well, then the government owns it. And, I'm an anarchist, so I'm not a big fan of government because government, violates the non-aggression principle by taxing people against their will. Okay, so that's the deontological or the rights-based argument for roads being privatized. What's the empirical, pragmatic, utilitarian? Well, do you know how many people die on those roads every year? Maybe fewer now because of COVID and people aren't traveling that much, but it's something like 35 to 40,000 a year. Now that's a lot of people. A lot of people die on the roads, and they have this thing: death, taxes, and automobile accidents or something. It's inevitable. I don't think. Death maybe maybe inevitable. Certainly without present technology, who knows in the future? But taxes are not inevitable, and I don't think road fatalities are inevitable. Well, I'm not sure about that because in my book, I do say that roughly 40,000 people on the roads die now. How many would die if it was privatized? And there would be people who would die even under privatization. Privatization is not a magic pill, where we can say no one will die. I estimated 10,000. Why 10,000? Because I got some statistics of how much more efficient is government than private in postal services and in sanitation collection. And it came out about 4-to-1. So I figured instead of 40,000, we'll have 10,000 dying. Why would we save 30,000 lives a year? Well, because of competition. Now, what my critics say, or what most people say, well, look, the reason we have so many deaths, whether it's 10,000 or 40,000, is speed and driver inattention and vehicle malfunction and, drunken driving and, all sorts of reasons like that. But those are just proximate causes. The ultimate cause is government mismanages. It doesn't deal with these problems. The example I often give, and I gave in the book, is we're now called in to explain why a restaurant failed. And this is before COVID. And, people say, well, location was located on a cul-de-sac and the waitresses were surly and the place was dirty. No. Those are just the proximate causes. The ultimate cause is that the entrepreneur didn't locate his restaurant better, didn't hire a better waitress, etc. The other example is I'm now going to shoot somebody. Here's my gun. I shoot the guy outside there and you all capture me and say you're a murderer. I say, tut, it was the bullet that killed him. Well, the bullet's the proximate cause, but I'm the ultimate cause. So the government is the ultimate cause. The government didn't stop the speeding and the vehicle malfunction and the driver inattention and the drunken driving and all that. Why would private people do better? Because competition brings about a better product. The reason we have pretty good shoes and pretty good shirts and pretty good pens and pretty good paper nail clippers or whatever it is because of competition. Competition brings about a better product. And, I illustrate this like, they say, well, maybe it's not speed. Maybe it's the variance in speed. Because right now on most highways, the minimum is 40 and the maximum is 70. And people do 75 and they don't get a ticket. And, somebody's doing 45. Maybe it's the variance in speed. We don't know. I don't know. But I tell you, if I own a road, I would make sure that the variance was dealt with some way. For example, I might say on the right lane, everyone has to do 50. And in the middle lane, everyone has to do 65. And in the left lane, everyone has to do 80. Whereas, right now, the maximum speed is 70, so you could do 65 in the left lane. And what you're doing is making everybody switch lanes, and that's going to create havoc. It's true they say stay to your right, but they never give anyone a ticket for doing 65 in the left lane with a 70 speed limit. So these are all the reasons why I think that the death rate would be radically reduced if we privatize roads. Okay, so now let me answer you. Well, were you going to say something or?
Yeah, I was just going to sort of give my spiel on what happened with this protest, but it sounds like you had something you wanted to lead with. So why don't you go ahead?
No. Now I want to get into the exact situation. Look, I'm a professor. I'm not supposed to answer questions directly. If I do, they'll kick me out. I'm very circuitous. So I was just giving
you have to lay your foundation first. So that's fine. Yeah.
So I gave the foundation why we should have private roads. Now I'm going to try to, recognize the question you asked. There are a bunch of hippies or left-wing anarchists, not free market anarchists, left-wing anarchists blocking the I-10 or the I-20 or the I-5 or whatever it is. Well, now suppose it was private. And then I'll get to your question because it's not private, it's public. Suppose it was private.
Yeah.
Suppose that I own the I-30 or the I-55. And you and a bunch of hippies and beatniks and Black Lives Matter people and Antifa, and you all sit in the middle of the road. Well, I'm not a fan of that. I would have my police escort you off the road. And if you didn't want to be escorted, I would tell them to escort you pretty strongly. And presumably, very, very strongly. I would kick you off the road. You're not supposed to be on the road. People are going 65 miles an hour. What are you doing? Yeah. Are you a maniac? Okay, but it's not a private road. It's a government road. So now the question is, well, who is the rightful owner of it? And here Hans Hoppe and I sort of get into it a little bit. I revere him. I think he's one of the best, not only libertarian theoreticians, but Austrian economists. But he and I have a little dispute about this. You suppose it was a bunch of Rothbardians, anarchists who took over a road. Not the left-wing Marxists, but Rothbardians. And Hans would say, well, the government is the agent of the taxpayers. The taxpayers are the rightful owners of the road, so the government should kick them off. And I diverge from this view. I think that if a bunch of Rothbardian anarchists took over a road, they would they would definitely not stop traffic. What they would do is they'd get up a sign and say, this is the Rothbard Road, or this is the Block Road, or Patrick Smith Road, or whatever. And we're letting everybody go by for free now. But, we have a little sign that, pretty soon we're going to be putting in implements to make the road safer. And we're going to charge you a fee through, electronic fee. Here is, what is that, universal
toll tag or something like that?
Here it is. This thing over here. When you go to the grocery store, you have that
barcode.
Barcode. Well, in my book, I say, what do you do if it's a private road? Do you have to put money in every mile or something? No. You put a barcode on the bottom of the car, and then you get a monthly bill or something like that. So it's not going to disrupt traffic. So I say that the Rothbardians would be road owners would be justified in doing it. And if any hippies came along there, then they would have the right to stop them. But now what we have is a very, very delicate, interesting question. I used to hate the cops. Why did I hate the cops? Because the cops put people in jail for victimless crimes. It's also true they put them in jail for victim crimes, but they put them in jail for victimless crimes like drugs or voluntary sex between consenting adults. So I was not a real big fan of the cops. And now it's the cops versus really bad criminals, and I'm sort of I'm not sure who to root for.
Right.
I'm usually very against unions, but the cop unions protect cops. And, I'd rather deal with the cops than with these Antifa people who are, just venomous Marxist monsters. So we libertarians have sort of a problem. Who do you root for when you have, the Nazis and the commies fighting? Who do you root for? Well, you wish them both good luck in fighting the other. That's one possibility. But I believe that blue lives matter, namely cop lives matter. And, there are people shooting cops. And so if it was a choice between the cops and the Marxists, I would go for the cops. I think cops are closer to libertarianism than the Marxists. I mean, the Marxists, they're a bunch of commies. At least the cops are, sort of vaguely for, middle of the road, whatever. Socialism or something like that. So if I had that choice, I would choose the cops. So I would say that the cops had a right to get rid of these people. And now I'm getting to your question. Well, what about the guy who drove through the bad guys? Well, first of all, if somebody came to his car with a gun, he has a right to shoot him in self-defense. On the other hand, there are these other cases where somebody takes a car and rams into a bunch of people that are protesting and kills one or two of them. There were cases like that, which is a similar case to the one you're bringing up. And there I'm rooting for not the guy in the car. It's true that the hippies or the Marxists were blocking him, but I think that the death penalty is too strong to do that. I tell you, if I were in a car, I would not ram people who were doing wrong. I just wouldn't. So it's very difficult for libertarians because you have two bad guys or two people who are not libertarian. I mean, when it's libertarian versus non-libertarian, things are very clear. we go for the libertarian. If a cop is arresting a prostitute, prostitute's right, cop's wrong. If a cop is arresting a rapist, well, then the cop is right and the rapist is wrong. But here you have these, two groups, the cops and the protesters, and it's very difficult. But I've given, to the best of my ability, my answer to your question. Finally, it took me a while, but at least I addressed it. I don't know if I did it well, but I tried.
No, it was a great intro to libertarian public property on all the way up. Let me just try and bop some heads along the way that I saw there. Like, yes, I agree. If I had to choose between commies and the Blue Line Gang, which I do see as just warring gangs at this point, I would definitely pick the Blue Line Gang. If I had to pick a winner, that would be the one I would want, because at least they want to be good people and are trying to be. Now, their idea of what is a good person is definitely screwed up. But at least there's clay that you could work with there, right?
It's only half screwed up, because they do good things. I mean, they stop murder, or they try to find the murder. They stop rapists, or they do some good things. Whereas you tell me what good the Marxists do, and I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you. We're pro-blue and not pro marchers or Black Lives Matter, Antifa people, Marxists.
Yeah, only if I had to pick, okay? I'm going to keep with that caveat. If I have to pick, that would be my choice. So the next thing, but when you started going in, you said that whether or not they're libertarian might affect whether or not we root for them. I was trying to look at it from what are the ethics of the situation? Forget that they were commies. Forget that they're Marxists. It turns out the guy driving the car in this case was like a soldier in the military. I forgot what branch. Forget all of that. Let's just look at the situation and develop the ethics and test our libertarian equation that we have, right, to apply. Because this is really useful for us. Unfortunately, when we have these conversations, a lot of people get butthurt because they've taken a side and they're upset that we aren't agreeing with them or whatever. I don't care. I just want to, flex my libertarian evaluation muscle. So that's what I'm doing here today. And so I started by talking about the ownership of the road and what is public property. And let me run that by you and see if you agree or disagree. So I always say that public property is basically either one of two things. It's either the same thing, it's equivalent to unowned property, or it's equivalent to stolen property in the case of it was acquired through eminent domain or whatever. If the road was acquired through eminent domain, then it still belongs to whoever it was stolen from, and there already is an owner of that road. And if it wasn't acquired that way, then it was probably homesteaded or purchased with stolen funds through taxation or something like that, in which case it's effectively unowned. And so, do you have any, speak up if you disagree with anything I say, otherwise I'll just keep on with the spiel.
No. I think you're look, we're really at the rough edge of libertarianism. These are tough questions, and I think you're a nasty person for bringing up tough questions. I'm kidding. I mean, should we privatize the post office? Yeah. Should we get rid of the minimum wage law? Yeah. I mean, no real debate, but this is very advanced libertarian theory here. So I'm with you so far.
Okay, cool. So when we say that it's unowned land, that sort of erases a large portion of current libertarian thought on the ethics of conflict that happens in a location, because usually the very first libertarian question you ask is, well, who owns the land that it happened on? That's where you always begin. And what were the rules in play from the owner? Well, we're in a tragedy of the commons. We're in an area where it's the actual owner has been excluded from control, or there is no actual owner. So none of that sort of matters for the discussion. And so then we go and we have to treat all the actors as sort of equals, right? Because it's unowned land. Nobody has one right to override another person on the land. So we have a situation where a bunch of equal people are marching up, down an area that is very commonly used for vehicles to travel on. And we have a guy in a vehicle doing what vehicles do, driving where vehicles drive. And then we have a crowd of people obstructing that travel. And so when I gave my sort of take on the situation a couple days ago, that was basically my evaluation. The first libertarian question is who owns the property it happened on, and the second libertarian question is who started the fight. Don't start none, won't be none. So who started it? And so I think the first sort of violation or initiation of force in this scenario was the group of people blocking the travel of a free and equal person. That's where the whole thing begins to break down. If the people had been walking where people walk on the roads that are for people called sidewalks, then there would have been no conflict, no situation, no one was blocked. Why don't I give you another opportunity to respond there if you agree or disagree?
Well, forget about government roads. Suppose there's a private road, then it's very, very clear. And now I own the road, and I want to go at around 65 miles an hour on the road, and a bunch of hippies are standing in the middle. And like a bowling ball, I could knock out 10 pins, only I could maybe kill 100 people if they were massed close together, right? They were all together, and I just like a knife through butter, and I killed 50 people. Am I happy with myself? I'm not really happy with myself, even though they're the bad guys and I'm the good guy. Because I think that, we have to bring in libertarian punishment theory. They were trespassing. But look, suppose you trespass on my lawn. And I tell you, sir, you're trespassing on my lawn. Please step off. And you go, oh, sorry, I didn't realize. And you get off quickly. Do I have a right to shoot you for trespass? Not really. Not at all.
Not in any libertarian society I would want to live in, at least.
Well, I think in a libertarian society, okay, you violated my rights. You put your foot on your toe on my land. And if I shoot you with a bazooka or with a rifle or something, I'm a murderer. Because the punishment is way over, if I find you a nickel or something, okay. Or, something like that. If I said, hey, you owe me a nickel for trespassing and you paid, okay, let's forget about if you refuse to pay the nickel, but a nickel would be a reasonable punishment and not death for, we call it stealing a bubble gum. If you stole bubble gum from my grocery, am I allowed to shoot you? Well, if you're a kid, certainly not. If you're an adult, not really.
At least not the first time.
I'm sorry?
I said at least not the first time.
Right. Now look, if when I tell you get off my lawn and you say, well, F you, or you give me the finger or something like that, well, now you're escalating. And now I think I can push you off. And if you take a swing at me, well, then, we escalate. Now I can shoot you. But you got to do a lot more. So what I would say is, let's say it's just a private road and it's my road and I want to do 70 miles an hour on my road and a bunch of Marxists are standing there. I don't think I should be able to do that. What I should do is get out my bullhorn and say, hey, do you people realize that you're trespassing? And I'll give you 10 minutes to get off. And if you're not off, then I'm going to, escalate. I think that would be appropriate. Or I'm going to call my cops, and my cops are going to have tear gas and rubber bullets or something. And if you shoot back, then we'll shoot you. Or if you push back, that would be the analogy when you refuse to get off my lawn and you took a swing at me. The higher the escalation goes, the more the righteous person is justified in using force, the more strength he can use. But to just go at 70 miles an hour and kill 50 people who are in the wrong, I think that would be atrocious and very much antipathetic to the libertarian law as I understand it.
Yeah, I think the punishment theory is in a lot of ways subjective and messy and not sort of it's not mathematical in its objectivity, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And so the analogy I often use is on the island versus in the city. So if the island is a place sort of outside the real world where only raw, philosophy from first principles takes place, and it's a very nasty, ugly place where, yes, private property. You have the right to do with your property whatever you want to do on your property, and you can use force against anybody that trespasses or tries to stop you, because to say otherwise would be, a varying degree of a violation of the right. But you would never, ever want to live in a place like that, because people bump into each other all the time. People step on corners of the lawn. You want to live in the city where the laws have been softened up by dispute resolution organizations and mutual agreements to let some things go in certain ways, and to have, not mob justice or whatever, to have a system in place to sort of adjudicate these things, and to have rules in place where, like you're talking about, where the punishment needs to at least somewhat match the severity of the crime, things like that. So I totally agree. Have you seen the video of this particular incident with the car driving into the crowd?
But I do want to comment on your city versus country.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure I go along with that, because it's true that in a dense city, you're more likely to bump into somebody or step on their toe inadvertently. And what you should do is say sorry. Mm-hmm. And if the guy really objects, say, look, I'll buy you a shoe shine, or, whatever it is to make it good. I'll give you $10, have a beer, let's be reasonable. But that can happen in the country too. It's just less likely to happen. So because of the density. So I don't think there's any principle. It's just more, border crossings are going to occur in the city than in the country. But I think libertarian theory is the same, no matter what the density is. So my
analogy was not to differentiate between population density. It was supposed to be like a spiritual place that doesn't actually exist, where us, philosophers, play logic games with each other about raw libertarian philosophy, and not in the real world. It's like the raw version with no common understandings, no subjective agreements on the rough edges around things. It's just where we sort of meet out raw logical thought. It's not meant to be like a country where there's hardly any people versus a city where there's a lot. It's supposed to be like a non-real place where where the only things that exist are A equals A, and anything that you can logically prove follows from A equals A. And in the city is supposed to mean like libertarian society as it would be practiced, in the real world. That's the analogy.
Well, I'll have to think about it more, because this is the first time I've thought about it. So I'm just giving you, you're thinking of sort of a platonic
yes.
island or a platonic country.
Yes.
I was just looking at the density, and I think we agree that if you just look at the density and forget about this platonic stuff, the principles are the same. It's just that there'll be fewer overlaps or border crossings, or, fewer, excuse me, I didn't mean to jostle you, or something like that. Or, well, look, I slipped on a banana peel and I crashed into you. I'm sorry, but, it'll happen fewer times, but it could happen even in a non-dense place rarely. Yeah. So I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like things that are subjective, like what exactly constitutes a threat is something that would exist in a city scenario, but you cannot prove from first principles in a platonic realm, like what constitutes a threat. There is no objective definition that I've found. I would love to learn one if you've got one.
The way I deal with that is I call it the continuum. What's the proper statutory rape age? We know if you go to bed with a 3-year-old girl, even if she's willing, you're a statutory rapist, because we don't think she's capable of agreeing to any such thing. You go to bed with a 23-year-old woman and she agrees, you're not a statutory rapist. So where do you draw the line? 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, somewhere in there. I don't know. And I don't think anyone knows. And libertarian theory doesn't say, well, it's 16. Because, why not 15 and 11 months, or 16 and 1 month? And how about if the girl is 14 and the boy is 15? Is that different than if the girl is 14 and the man is 45? You get into all sorts of, okay, look, right now I've got this gun here and I'm going to threaten you. I don't like the cut of your jib. What city are you in now?
Dallas.
I'm in New Orleans. I'm going to threaten you. I'm going to shoot you. Do you have a right to you have a missile, by the way, that'll pinpoint, just get me. Do you have a right to use it?
No.
Not really. Well, first of all, the context is, we're friends. I'm going to shoot you. But even if it was serious, it's too far away for you to kill me, for a threat like that has to be more immediate. How immediate? I don't know. How close does it have to be? If I threaten you with a fist, and it's a dark alley and you see the light glinting off my wristwatch and you think it's a knife, you have a right to shoot me. But if I now threaten you in Dallas with my fist, that's crazy. But where do you draw the line? How close do you have to be? So I agree with you entirely. It's a very subjective kind of a thing. On the other hand, you said that punishment theory is not exact. Well, I have an exact theory of punishment. Well, not really an exact theory, but a mathematical theory. I steal your car. First thing that has to happen is I give you back your car. Mm-hmm. Second thing that has to happen is that I give you my car, assuming my car is of equal value with your car. So we now have 2 teeth for a tooth, not 1.9 teeth and not 2.1 teeth, but 2.000 teeth. Third, if after I stole your car, I went to the police and I said, hey, I was crazy. I stole his car. Here's the car. I'm sorry. Well, then there were no costs of capture. But if I sneak around for 5 years and you and your buddies keep looking for me, well, for those 5 years, I got to pay for that. And then fourth, notice how mathematical this is. Fourth, when I stole your car, I scared you. How scared did I get? Well, if I came with a gun and I carjacked you, very scared. And if I just stole your car when you weren't looking, a little less. And the punishment for me should be the number of, I have to play Russian roulette. And if it's a very serious thing, the bullet goes right here. If it's not a serious thing, the bullet goes into my pinky. And the number of, bullets and the number of chambers is proportional to how badly I scared you. So we're getting mathematical, but again, I don't know how many bullets and how many chambers for which crimes, but happily, you and I don't have to decide that. There will be people in a free society, free market judges and juries who will decide what the punishment is. But I think that the punishment should be on those 4 things. I return the car, I give you my car. Third, I pay for the cost of capture. And fourth, I scared you. And what are you going to do? Go boo like this to me? No, we have to do something serious. Now, if Bill Gates is a thief, see, the thing is, you might say, well, Bill Gates, the beauty of the Russian roulette is to get Bill Gates if he's a thief. Because, if he has to just give another car and pay for costs of capture, he'll steal all the days long if he's so motivated. I'm just using him as a rich man. I'm not thinking he's a thief. But if you now have the right to compel him to play Russian roulette, and the number of chambers and the number of bullets is pretty close, you can get $1 billion out of him if he values his life. So that would obviate the objection. Well, the libertarian punishment theory would be open sesame for the rich. It would not, because he owes me, he stole from me now, or I stole from you, I owe you a Russian roulette, but we can make a deal. I say, okay, look, I have 3 bullets and 100 chambers, and I don't really like the odds of 3% being, so I'll give you 10,000. Let me out of it. And I think that would be my libertarian punishment theory.
It's fascinating. But I
agree with you that it's very subjective, and this continuum is the I think one way to look at it.
I have a lot of thoughts on the things that you just said, and we probably only have time for 10% of them, so maybe we'll have you back to talk about this stuff later. But the first thing I want to mention...
That's why I purposely came on late, so you'll invite me again.
That was going to happen anyway. The first thing I want to say was you brought up a perfect point, and I knew exactly the words you were about to say because I just finished performing them for your audiobook of Defending the Undefendable 2, where you talk about the death penalty and you go through your punishment theory and you talk about, eye for an eye, eye for 2 eyes or something like that. And it's a fascinating discussion. It's a great book. I believe it's going to be published both on Mises.org and Audible very soon, so I would tell everybody it's not ready yet, and I will definitely make an announcement on this channel when it's out, but definitely look for that because he discusses exactly what we're talking about here. The second thing I want to talk about was the continuum problem thing. I've heard you talk about the continuum problems in a lot of different areas, certainly age of consent, certainly threat. I think, though, that we shouldn't be comfortable with that as a conclusion. Yes, I think those things, that the continuum problem does exist, but I don't think it means that we should stop trying to find an answer that actually locates that laser fine line in the sand where, on this side it's right and on this side it's wrong. And I've certainly done work with that for age of consent. I think that's a long discussion maybe for the next time I have you on. I think just the short version is, rather than trying to pick an age, which is obviously, like you say, an arbitrary thing that's going to be different for everybody, I think you just work on a definition that can be objective, something involving sentience, something involving the ability to sort of plan ahead or defer gratification. These are things that you need to sort of participate in reciprocal rights agreements with other adults. Like once you are at a capacity where you can be shown to have this, then I think you are also at a capacity to sort of make sexual decisions for yourself. But this is like the most extreme topic that we're going to get, pitchforks at us very soon. So maybe we save that one for next time.
You're a nasty fellow, bringing up some great stuff and not letting me talk about it.
Oh, no, you can respond if you want. I don't want to do that to you.
I'm going to be suing you for, I don't know what, malpractice.
Oh, no.
Like that. So I think this is fascinating. Mozart's first symphony was age 3 or age 4. My daughter is a neuroscientist. So What you're saying is one day, not now, but one day maybe Mozart or some girl or Mozart himself, he could engage in sex at age 3 because he's a genius, or Einstein or something like that. So what you're saying in effect is, I lost your face.
No, I'm hiding because this is the one topic I don't really talk about publicly.
Oh, okay. Well, then
no, go ahead. No. It's fine. Go ahead.
Well, I'm very intrigued by this because, one day, look, we can't measure utils, we can't measure happiness, but we could measure cognizance or something like that. And we could come up with a genius of 3 years old. And then the laws of the statutory rape wouldn't apply to such a person because that person passed the test. Well, I'm open to thinking about that. I mean, I think it's a brilliant thought on your part, and I am very grateful to you because my attitude was this is insoluble. The continuum problem. There is no solution. And, one country says the age of consent is 15, and the other says 17, and I have nothing to say about that. But, there are people who are more mature at 14. And then there are people, say mentally handicapped people of 30 who are not capable of giving consent to sex. So if you go to bed with a 30-year-old person who is mentally handicapped, you're sort of a statutory rapist, even though they're of an age, but they're not of a cognizance level. So you're making a brilliant point, and I'm very grateful to you for tweaking me in that way.
My only tweak was not to advocate for sex rights for 3-year-olds. God help me. But my only tweak was just that I don't think saying something is a continuum problem should be something that allows us to be comfortable in that position, because I think there's more work that can be done. Not that your work and your words in that area are not perfectly valid and understandable.
No, you're pushing me, and I appreciate being pushed. I don't like the idea of insoluble problems. I like to solve problems. And what you said was very, very important, and I'm very grateful to you for saying it.
So in an attempt to do the same thing for threats, to apply a non-subjective definition to a threat, this is from the military. They call it the threat triangle, and it involves the things that you're mentioning in your analogy. Hopefully you can see this. Capability, intent, and opportunity. And, there hopefully would be ways to, sorry, I'm covering your face up instead of mine.
No, that's okay.
But anyway, that's just, there are interesting things that we should be, and I'm not saying that's the answer. I'm just saying that we shouldn't give up, and we should try and find objective definitions for this stuff. With that said, with the time that we have left, let me try and walk you through the specific situation of this protest as unbiased as I can. And I know I've published my opinion and my analysis of this already for everybody, but I'm still going to try and do it as unbiased as possible because Block hasn't, and I don't want to taint the well of his opinion on this. So with your permission, let me lay it out, and then you can maybe give your thoughts on it. Good? Do I have your permission?
Sure, shoot.
Okay.
So to speak.
Everything's consensual here. Okay. So basically the situation is this. protest going on in the street. Both lanes of the street are full of people. Some are walking, some are standing still. Car pulls up to a light perpendicular to the people walking. It's a red light. Right turns on red is legal in Texas. Not that the status law sort of matters for this situation because it's unowned land, but I'm just telling you what happened. He makes a right on red, sort of threads the needle between some people, and then comes to a stop. Comes to a complete stop. It's not like he was going 15 miles an hour. He was like going around a corner. He's probably 5. He was definitely less than 10, maybe 5 miles per hour. Comes to a stop, honks his horn, rolls his window down. Rather than disperse, and this was another linchpin in my discussion when I was evaluating this, rather than get out of his way, because I've been involved in street protests with anarcho-capitalists, and when a car comes along, we get out of the way. We don't try and block, free movement of people. Here I am poisoning the well. I just said I wasn't going to do that. Anyway, so he comes to a stop, and rather than get out of the way, the crowd surrounds his car on all sides, which I think was a second aggression, or maybe just an escalation of the initial aggression. Then the guy with a rifle in his chest in battle fatigue, a battle vest, comes up with his hand on the grip of the rifle. The rifle's pointed down at the ground. He never raised the rifle or pointed it at the driver of the car or anything, but he had his hand on the grip of the rifle, approached the driver's side door of the car that was totally surrounded by people. And basically the next thing that happened that I can verify was that the driver shot 5 times at the guy that walked up, killing him. And then the crowd dispersed and he drove away. And as he was driving away, somebody shot at him 3 times or whatever. And that was the end of the story. And so my evaluation was that the first violation of the non-aggression principle was when the crowd blocked the guy's travel. The second, or maybe just an escalation, was when they surrounded him instead of got out of his way. And then when you're in that situation, the only way you can defend yourself from so many sort of, they were pounding on his car as well. When they surrounded him, they were pounding on his car. I thought that was a third escalation or violation because you don't get to hit people's cars. Anyway, so what are your thoughts?
You're a nasty man. That's my thought.
That's like the 4th time you've called me a nasty man.
I have a very similar situation when we have Mardi Gras. It's in New Orleans. It's on St. Charles Avenue. I live on St. Charles Avenue. If I want to get into my parking garage, I have to go through a crowd at a quarter of a mile an hour. Nobody ever came up to me with a rifle, and nobody pounded on my car. But so I viscerally can identify with this. But in baseball, what happens if the runner and the ball get to first base at the same time? What they say is tie goes to the runner. I think tie goes to the runner in baseball, but it's a tie. It's really close. You see, before you mentioned that pounding, I was sort of against the guy, but with the pounding, it means that the whole crowd was against him. And now I'm sort of, I'm glad I'm not a lawyer. I'm glad I'm not a judge. I'm glad I'm not a jurist. This is a real tough one. It's a very close call. But the pounding for me meant that the whole kit and caboodle of them were threatening him. And he had a right to shoot the guy, and not only shoot that guy, but run over a few of the people that were pounding his car too. But without the pounding, it's very tough because the guy had a rifle, but he wasn't. If he started pointing it, he doesn't have to point it directly, but if he starts moving that rifle, shoot him. But if the rifle is just sitting there, you don't want to shoot the guy for, but that pounding is a threat of the whole kit and caboodle of them. And I would exonerate that guy. I would say, even if he not only shot the guy with the rifle, but killed 5 people and wounded another 10, I would still go with him. I would say he was innocent. He was provoked. He was defending himself.
Yeah,
and to make it better, suppose he had his wife and 2 kids in the car.
Yeah.
He was protecting his family, for God's sakes. Those guys shouldn't be, first of all, okay, they shouldn't be standing there. Second of all, this guy with a rifle shouldn't be coming up to him. Third of all, the pounding, that's very, very serious. 50 people pounding on your car and you got your wife and kids in the car? Yeah, shoot them all or run them all over or,
Yeah.
That's a very serious threat. And without the pounding, if they're just standing there, I'm in between and in betwixt. I'm sort of like in baseball where the batter and the ball gets to first base at the same time. I don't know what to say given the philosophy of baseball. You know, A is A in baseball, and where do you get there? Well, they arbitrarily decided that the tie goes to the runner. I guess it's hard to get on base. They want more people on base. But it's a very, very tough question, and I've given my best shot at it, and I'd have to rethink it. But that's my best shot.
Okay, we're at 7 o'clock, so if you need to go at any time, just say the word and we can wrap it up. I want to be respectful of your time. Or I can say a few more things, and maybe we can talk a little bit longer. It's totally up to you.
One more thing, and then we'll get off at 10 after 7.
Sounds good to me. So there's all sorts of little aspects of this that are interesting to talk about. One is like all the people that were participating in this protest weren't necessarily like part of some organization that should be held culpable for what each other does. So when one group of people pounds on the car, what does that have to do with the guy there with the rifle? I think that's one thing that might be worth talking about. Another thing, I open carry my pistol almost every day. And as part of that, I realized that every action I take is exaggerated in other people's eyes. So if let's say I use this example in a recent video. If I get ripped off in a store and I confront the manager, hey, this guy just ripped me off. That's not okay. We got to fix this. If I'm open carrying my pistol, which means I have a pistol, openly visible on my hip, everything I do is like 10 times exaggerated. So I go from being a disgruntled customer that's just upset to a guy that's screaming and threatening everyone and scaring everybody around me. So just having a weapon, even if it's not pointed or even if I'm not even touching it, that has an effect in people's minds of being a higher level of a threat. That's interesting. The last thing I want to say before I hand it to you, maybe for final thoughts on this stuff, would be I think you skipped over where I thought the first aggression was, and this might be an interesting point of disagreement from us, where I said the first initiation of force was when the crowd blocked the guy's ability to drive, on a road where he's supposed to be able to drive. It's especially, and I think we agree, like especially once they surround the car, even without pounding, though. You have entrapped that guy. You have has enslaved him is probably the wrong word, but it's like you have de facto imprisoned him. And that in and of itself is an initiation of force. So even before you get to the pounding, I think there's already been a problem here that he should be able to defend himself from. Okay, that was 3 things. That's probably enough for you.
Well, now that we're getting back to my Mardi Gras situation, when Mardi Gras, the way it works on St. Charles, the parade goes east. The parade goes east. And my road goes west. And the parade is supposed to just be on the east side, but there's so many people, they spill over, not only in the midsection, the midway, whatever, but they spill over onto the road that I'm driving on, and I have every right to drive on. But I tell you, if I purposely mowed people down because I was entrapped, I should go to jail. So I think that's a very, very minor thing. It's true, it's a violation of rights, but it's more similar to you put your toe on my lawn. Yes, you violated my rights, but what the heck? But nobody pounded on the car in my case, and nobody ever came up to me with a rifle. That is a non-cop who is less scary than you or anybody else with an open carry. So I was cognizant of what you said, and I agree with you that is the first violation of rights. But it doesn't seem to me that it's justifies killing anyone. I see. Okay. But the pounding, when we got to the pounding, and I like my wife and kids in the car, because that gives a more weight to the possible murderer, right? So if 50 people are surrounding the car and there's a guy with a rifle that I think is part of the group, and I've got my wife and kids in the car, I'm hitting that gas pedal and tough on the people who are violating my rights. but just surrounding the car, and it's good natured. Everyone's half drunk in Mardi Gras. And, if I were to do that, that would be detestable. So I don't give as much cognizance to just surrounding inadvertently. But that triangle that you had, intention, is really, really important. Look, if I push you, that's assault and battery. Mm-hmm. But if I push you because I think there's a truck about to run you over and I'm saving your life, right? I mean, yes. Physically, it's the same act, but it's a very, very different act because the motivation is clear. Now, pounding gives a very, very bad intent, opportunity, capability, and intent. Intent is very important. Whereas the Mardi Gras people, they're not intending to hurt anyone. And there are other cars, and every car goes at 1 mile an hour or a quarter of a mile an hour, a few feet, and then people get out of the way. And I don't even blow my horn. Not that the horn would be heard, because Mardi Gras is pretty loud, but I sometimes do the bright lights or something, a high beam. And sometimes I'll get out of the car and say, please let me through. And people are pretty nice, although every once there's a nasty person who starts doing a dance right in front of my car. And what I do is I wait them out. But if I were to run him over, I think I would be a criminal. Mm. Maybe I'm a wuss. And you're a macho.
Well, I guess the last thing. What about that associated thing? Like one of the protesters might not have had any association with somebody else. And how does the libertarian law affect like doing things in concert with other people, sharing culpability? Do you have any thoughts on that, or maybe that's something for next time?
Well. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. You're really pushing me, and I appreciate being pushed around, and I thank you for pushing me, and I would very much like to be on your program again. So thanks for having me this time. And next time I'll be on time.
It's totally fine. It worked out fine. As always, I think I've talked to you 3 times now on various YouTube channels. Man, I love talking to you. It's so much fun. We always go places that I don't get to go with anybody else, so I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It was just a pleasure.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.